Well, it's time for a holiday discussion with Ohio House Speaker Bob Cupp. Bob, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate this sort of year-end review and look into the crystal ball and see what the future may hold. But as we sit here and talk, as we sit here and tape this, as we talked, you are the current Speaker of the Ohio House of Representatives, but some may see this and you may be a few days removed from that position, depending on the time people are seeing this. But
right.
You go till the end of the year, and then you have some other duties that start the beginning of the year, and then you're done.
That's right. I have reached my term limit in the Ohio House, so the end of this year, my term expires. But I remain Speaker of the House until then. But the Constitution provides that the Speaker of the previous session gavels to order the new session, which will begin January 3rd. So I will be there gaveling in the new session. We'll get the new members sworn in. The members will then elect a new Speaker, and I will hand them the gavel, and I will be exiting stage right.
All right. Now, as that happens, we'll get to this question right now, right off the top. What does Bob Cupp do after exiting stage right on January 3rd?
Well, he doesn't know. So I have about 30 years of accumulated personal stuff I need to do. I have started a backyard orchard, just individual things, and so I've not had much time to do the gardening or be in my orchard or those kind of things. So we'll want to spend some time doing that. And I've got boxes and boxes of papers stacked in my basement from when I was a county commissioner, from my law practice, from when I was on the Supreme Court, when I was in the state Senate, and a few from the Ohio House of Representatives as well, although most things are digitized now, so they don't take up so much space. So we'll be sorting through all of those, and I have deliberately tried not to talk to anybody about what opportunities might come in the next year, because I didn't want that to get in the way of what my duties are as a Speaker of the House and create any sort of ethical tension. So we'll see what develops.
I had talked to you this in the past at a talk I gave was years ago, and I joked, I've been around long enough to see Bob Cupp be a county commissioner, I think twice.
That's right.
State House, State Senate, Appellate Court.
Court of Appeals, yeah,
Third District Court of Appeals. Mm-hmm. Ohio Supreme Court, back to the House as Speaker of the House. So you talk about doing some things you want to do at home. Not retired yet, or are you retiring from public service, or is that still up in the air?
Well, I don't have any plans to run for elected office again, although as one has observed over the years, you never say never, but that's not in my plans. But I would like to be involved in some way, continue to contribute as best I can to the community and to the state. I think all of us have an obligation to do what we can to make things better where we're at with what we have. So we'll be open to those kind of things if they come along.
And I have a feeling I know what answer I might get to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Maureen O'Connor, is age limited out. She is not going to be Chief Justice. Sharon Kennedy was elected to that position. There'll be an open seat on the Supreme Court. Someone has experience. Has there been any discussion or approach of Bob Cupp to fill that seat?
Well, it just so happens that I am past the age when one is constitutionally allowed to serve as a judge in Ohio. So nobody has asked me because I'm not eligible.
Well, I'll tell you what, no one would have ever guessed you 70 years old. No one at all. That's why I asked the question. Let's look at 2022, your year as House Speaker, or this past year as House Speaker. Some of the things that jump out at you that got done in 2022.
The main thing, it's a two-year session, so 21, 22 kind of blend together. We were able to pass a state budget that is in balance, and it had a substantial tax cut for all Ohioans, a 3% across the board. We flattened our tax brackets to make it flatter and fairer, as we say. And we also raised the threshold up to $25,000 before anybody has to pay any state income tax, so that they can spend the needs they have on their families and their own needs. And we enacted a new school funding framework for Ohio's public schools, and also expanded the opportunity for school choice. It's a project of the new state school funding formula is about 30 years in the making. We spent about 3 years crafting a mechanism to do it, to be able to support the schools that are less able to raise money locally. So it passed. It's a 3 budget phase in, so over 6 years we have the first 2 in, and so hopefully the General Assembly will continue to phase it in. So we've also, of course, had to deal with the COVID issue, and we put in some checks and balances over the executive's health orders, so the legislature now has some input. It was a very old statute. Nobody ever thought we'd have a statewide pandemic that we had 100 years ago. So the statute needed adjusting. We were able to do that. And just a lot of other things along the way, a transportation budget that ramps up our spending on our state highways and infrastructure. We know that's very important in a state to be able to attract business and industry and for those jobs that are important. The legislature also added a mega project incentive, so for a very large investment, and of course Intel fits into that category. So we adjusted what we do to help ensure that Intel came to Ohio, which is going to have broad ramifications economically all over the state of Ohio. They may be located in central Ohio, but here in Allen County, there's already a company that is broke ground for a $30 million investment, and one of their major products is going to go into semiconductor industry. So that's going to have positive repercussions economically all over the state for years to come. So those are just a few of the things we were able to do.
A lot accomplished. Let's stick with education. Let's go all the way back to DeRolf and up to current day. I've been covering it for these years.
Yeah.
You've been through it all. You've had a big part of trying to get that funding formula that works for the entire state, that's constitutional, holds up to the law, holds up to the courts, whatever comes its way. What urban areas, rural areas, it seems like each 4 corners of the state are a little different.
Yeah.
Southwest, southeast, northeast, northwest. So you've had these poorer school districts, richer school districts. How is that part of the complication? How complicated has that been of an issue, education and funding?
Well, actually, it's very complicated because we have all these differences that you just mentioned, and yet you have one school funding formula that's supposed to be able to provide adequate funding for all of those. So you have districts that have a high concentration of business property, and the real estate is valued, so they're able to raise more locally. And then you have areas like here in western Ohio, mostly a lot of farmland, southeastern Ohio, Appalachia, which very little development at all, and they can have very high tax rates and still raise very little money for their schools. And so the formula is designed to sort of equalize all those out, taking into account value of local property, value of income. But one of the most important factors is trying to figure out how much money is appropriate or necessary for an adequate education, a quality education. And so part of this takes what it actually costs, not the high, not the low, but somewhere in the good middle, and applies those factors to determining how much money a school district as targeted should be getting. So we were fortunate this time because we had some folks who had a real deep expertise in not only school funding, operating schools, funding schools, but also tax experts and real estate property tax experts who were able to get some of the little fine mechanisms, who knew how they worked and were able to build that into it. So it was basically a lot of outside input that then we were able to bring to the legislature and get the legislature to adopt.
Let's reflect on the career real quick. How do you see the 30 years of service you mentioned in the various positions, your last couple years getting to finish up with a fellow Allen Countyan, if you will, with Matt Huffman as president of the Senate? Your thoughts on if you're going to be in the backyard working on the orchard and doing that, and no more calls come in, how do you look back on this career?
Well, one thing, I feel very fortunate because I enjoy working in public policy, trying to solve public problems, being able to have policies that create opportunity for individuals so that we can have prosperous communities, that we can have children that are well educated. So I've just really enjoyed doing that. And yes, the legislature can be frustrating. It can be a long delay in getting things done, but you have to take that, weigh that against the opportunity to actually get things accomplished. Some of the most satisfying things are things that nobody else has ever heard of. Somebody has a problem, they call their legislator, they say, here's my problem, and then you go to work trying to find a solution. And it doesn't require a big bill, it requires a little tweak in the law, and you can get that done without fanfare, and you know you've really helped accomplish. So you add those up over the years, and you've actually helped a lot of people in a lot of ways. But it was, and I had, as somebody who really admires our founding fathers of this country and the way they built the Constitution, made the Constitution based on experiences they had, to see that sort of work in being part of the different branches of state government, to see how the checks and balances work, the separation of powers work. It's just a fascinating thing to measure reality against theory. And my conclusion is, of course, the founding fathers were absolute geniuses, and they understood, you know, human behavior and really built something to last. So it's been exhilarating to be in it. Yes, sometimes frustrating, sometimes exhausting. But I have a satisfaction that we've been able to accomplish some good things for our communities, for our state, and for the people, of course, who make them up. And what really kind of a highlight was the last 2 years when the Senate President was from Lima, or Allen County, and I'm from Allen County, and I don't think that's happened in at least a century or more from anybody from the same county being head of both chambers. So we really worked well together, and the House of Representatives with 99 members and the Senate with 33 members are really very different bodies in many respects. The House is much more dynamic. It's much more reflective of current public mood, and members, you know, want to do things to reflect that mood. The Senate, because it's has three times as many people, it's a different makeup. It's a little more deliberative and reflective, and you know, weighs things the long term a little more. So when you put those together, there's often kind of a clash in the current moment about what should be done. So we're heading up very different chambers, but we were able to work together. And when we came to differences, we were able to work those out, get around it. So I think we've had some really 2 very productive years, and it was great to work with somebody that I could trust, who I knew, and I think that's the same, you know, vice versa.
Well, soon to be former Speaker of the Ohio House of Representatives, Bob Cupp, thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.